all about the kind of the new normal. For those of you that don't know me, and there's almost 150 of you here so far, so many of you won't know me, but I'm Lorna Greville. I work here at the Student Room, and I'm an account director here and specialise in higher education marketing. I'm an award-winning youth marketer and have worked in higher education for the last 5 or 6 years, and prior to that worked in kind of FMCG, private sector work, and try to bring a lot of that experience I had before in the private sector to HE, because I think we've all got to learn a lot from one another. And those of you that do know me probably know that I look after quite a lot of the work that we do together, and I'm really, really proud of that. So that's who I am. Like I said, there's about 150 of you here today, which is absolutely fantastic. I would like to just say at this junction that this is probably going to run over slightly, maybe by 5 or 10 minutes. If you can stay, fantastic. If not, we are recording this. I'd asked Marissa to begin recording just earlier on. So there'll be an opportunity for you to watch back if you miss anything at the end, because I do anticipate we'll run over a little bit. There is a lot to talk about. I would prefer to share that with you and have the space to do that rather than cut it short and miss out some important bits. So what are we going to talk about today? So really, I'm kind of grouping this into 2 main areas. So looking at New Year 13s, who they are, what they're doing on the Student Room, and a bit about their decision making. And then separately, I focus on recruitment events and multi-omnichannel experiences. So it's kind of broken out into those 2 areas. It should all flow together. We'll do a summary at the end, and then there'll be time for a Q&A. So please add your Q&A questions, or any questions you've got, into the Q&A box. That's exactly what that's there for. Any of you that would like to come on camera and ask questions, you're very, very welcome to. And please keep asking them throughout the session. I'll keep an eye on it so that if anything feels really pertinent in the moment, I'll answer it there and then. And anything that I think maybe is a bit bigger, we can wait to the end and I can go through it in a Q&A, which hopefully will be really, really valuable. I just want to caveat right now to say that many of you asked for some specific things in the booking box. So thank you so much for those bits. I try really hard not to be prescriptive here and to give specific tactics, because fundamentally I don't want you all to go away and do the exact same thing. So really this is kind of an information sharing session, a guide about where, kind of what to focus on, but not specific tactics. And I've got a couple of book recommendations in the mix as well. So I really hope that today is valuable for you. I really welcome all your feedback and any topics you'd like me to cover in the future. But hopefully today will just give you a bit of an overview of what the market's looking like at the moment from what we can see on the Student Room, and hopefully give you a little bit of confidence in future and with some of your activity. So let's kick off then. It's worth saying that the whole world has turned upside down. Big time. Are you impressed with my PowerPoint animation skills? I'm impressed with myself. I learned how to do this yesterday. The whole world has turned upside down, and over the last year, everyone has had to work in brand new ways, brand new systems, doing multiple jobs at the same time. It's really, really challenging. And the change isn't just behind us. There's lots of change ahead. There's lots of things that are continuing to change. I was updating this presentation literally yesterday because obviously so much is changing. The whole weekend there was, and kind of continuing, a lot of criticism of students and querying about whether students should have gone back to university, which is a challenge. And I really feel for you guys trying to work through that. It is really challenging, but change will continue. And so whilst this is, if we target this the new normal, and actually as time's gone on, I really think that's probably the wrong name for it. I think we'd love for it to be a new normal, but there's change coming, there's change on the way. We don't even know whether or not the kids are going to be able to come home for Christmas. So hopefully this is a kind of a guide for where to, kind of what to look at, rather than, like I said, kind of prescriptive tactics. And then finally working out what way to go. There is so much change, and I would hope that I can give some level. Oh, my screen's just gone black, so sorry. Let's see if I can, hopefully you can still see it. There's so many options, so many ways to go. When there's a lot of change, there are more options, and decision making is incredibly difficult. Now today we're going to talk about decision making for students, but there's also so much decision making for you. For those of you that haven't come to previous webinars, there's a couple of sessions that I'd really recommend having a look at. So first off, there's a great session that was run with my colleague Pete Taylor, all about digital experiences, which I think is a bit of a kind of foundation for some of the bits we talk about later on today. And there's also a session about strategy and marketing strategy. And fundamentally, marketing strategy is all about making the right decisions for you, using the right information, the right data, the right goals to make the right decisions, which is so much easier said than done. And boiling it down to that probably isn't it oversimplifies it. But fundamentally, there's just so much change. And a lot of decisions to make. But the first one really is just working out what the next step is. Really, the reason I'm here today to talk to you, aside from being really passionate about this sector, is that at the Student Room, we have the perfect balance of quantitative data, a lot of students, 8 million students a month joining the Student Room to look at our information, to ask questions, to engage. But the great thing about all of those, well, like that kind of big quantitative figure, is also the qualitative. We can see the students asking questions. We know what they're talking about. And quantitative data is fantastic for looking back. It doesn't mean to say that it predicts the future. It's a great way to see where you've come from, and it can help inform decision making, but it isn't everything. Qualitative data is where you get to look forwards a little bit more. For those of you, again, that, well, I've maybe had some meetings with you and we've talked a little bit about deferrals. A lot of you guys were asking me questions about deferrals back in April and May time. And the kind of advice in what I was saying back then is, you know, all the surveys coming out were suggesting that students were going to defer in their thousands, in their droves, that it was going to be a real challenge. And, you know, that's, I'm sure, you know, I'm sure students were being truthful and they said that they considered deferring. But what I was seeing on the Student Room, I really was not seeing the conversation about deferring. I really wasn't seeing the behaviour on the site that would suggest that. They were so engaged, they were really anxious to make sure they were making the right next step. And also, students are sensible young people. They recognise that there's not much else to do, and the university is the best option. So while surveys were saying, and the data, you know, the big quantitative data was saying there's going to be mass deferrals, and of course we were really worried about it, what I was seeing didn't really reflect that. Again, a lot of the feedback we've had from you guys, and obviously the first UCAS data suggests that really it's a student behaviour that was right there in terms of their conversation. Deferral was not on their mind until they were asked about it, and it felt like a bit of a leading question. So hopefully the mix of our quantitative and qualitative data will be a really good guide. So I'll just touch on this a bit more. So New Year 13s. I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes about that big quantitative data in terms of the big trends we're seeing in behaviour, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the specific conversations that students are talking about and where they're preoccupied. It's worth saying that whilst there's big growth in some areas, the hygiene factors remain, the challenges that maybe you're facing year on year remain. They're just a bit more urgent and a bit more extreme. So let's kick off. Across the whole site, just in the last week alone, we have seen 43% increase in posting. So posting is where students are asking questions, answering questions, and engaging with one another and with you, your official reps. Within that grade level posting, there's 42% more posts per poster. So what that means is there's not just more people posting, but those that are posting more. That's transferring into 48% more words written. So lots more posts, but those posts are more in depth. There's more in there. What's lovely here is there's 32% more rep given. So rep is like where you like something. So on Facebook, you might just give it a little like. On Reddit, you might do a little up vote. And on the Student Room, you give rep. And so we're seeing a lot more rep, which is fantastic. That suggests that students not only are engaging more, but they're also getting a lot of value out of what they're receiving on the Student Room, which is really positive. You know, if engagement was really high, but there was no rep, that would be a bit of a concern. But no, students are really getting value from their engagement with you and with one another. And all of this is resulting in a 32% greater dwell time per session. So more engagement, more conversation, higher dwell time, and based on what their rep suggesting that they're getting a lot of value from us, which is really fantastic. Just drilling down a little bit more, so there's a growth in unis and colleges. So this is your specific forums, guys. So your university, your colleges, this is where students are. There's a 19% growth there in conversation there, but the big growths are actually in the bit that precedes application, which is their qualifications. So understandably, and I'm sure it's no surprise, students are very anxious about the fact that they have completely missed a huge amount of their learning. Which is really unfortunate. I'm just going to, so Peter has asked just about, are these growth figures based on a comparison of the point last cycle? So yes, these are year on year for the comparative week. So it's not comparative dates, it's a comparative week. So we work on a Monday to Monday or Sunday to Sunday basis. So yeah, cool. Thank you, Peter. That's a really good question. Making sure that, yeah, I'm talking about data accurately. So yeah, the kind of focus on A-levels and BTEC really is about that piece before application. So like I said, students have really missed out on a lot of their schooling, particularly in large comprehensive schools. They may have really missed out, and also those students that just don't have the internet at home, maybe that they don't have a laptop at home, their learning has been really impaired, and they're finally back at university, finally back at school, finally back at college, and able to get stuck in, but they need the extra help when they're turning to the student room even more than ever. It's worth saying, huge amounts of our early engagement on the student room is primarily about study help. So GCSEs is where students first come through to us, and then they remain. So to see such growth on what was already very large numbers is very revealing, really, very revealing. And then just specifically on the audiences, so 43% greater levels of posting across the whole site, but then for year 13s alone, there's a growth of 46% in posting. So the whole site, we're seeing all young people engaging with us, but year 13s even more so. And I'm sure, it's not a surprise, but it's really important to look at those figures. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the kind of more specifics on subject specific, because as we'll talk about shortly, the qualitative piece that what students are talking about is working out what subject they want to do and feeling very confused about it. So in terms of page views then on specific forums, so those of you that don't know about the student room that much, the site is a forum site, and we have hundreds of forums broken down into lots of different subject areas, lots of different categories. One of the areas of the largest growth of the last week, again, this is year-on-year growth. So again, just to Peter's point about the point of comparison, it's the last week, it's on the student room, and it's looking back, comparing the same week. So 111% increase in personal statement reviews. And at the bottom there, you can see also an 8% personal statement advice page view figure as well, big growth across both of those points. Once again, it's worth to note here, these are already big numbers. Personal statements this time of year are already a really popular thing on the student room and have been for many years. So again, to see growth on that is huge. Those of you that were receiving our data digests across clearing, one of my last digests at the end of August was actually touching upon this. So the year 12s, as they were then, obviously now they're year 13s, in the last week of August, we saw huge upticks, 28% increase in posting across personal statement advice, massive uptick, and much earlier. And I think we're seeing that again here. So big engagement. Obviously we don't have the data, any data really from UCAS yet about where applications are going so far, if they're early, if they're maybe a bit late. But what we're seeing is a much higher engagement with these topics. And then 3 subject areas that have seen huge growth in page views. So classics, ancient languages and archaeology. Kind of love seeing that. I did English literature. So kind of anything that's humanities and creative, I kind of love to see that growth. A personal thing from me there. But very interesting and bucks the trend across many other things. But then medicine and physio and occupational therapy, also seeing large growth. Again, medicine and healthcare have seen huge growth in conversation and engagement, largely I'm sure due to it being in the press more and more. And NHS being our heroes this entire year, thank goodness for the NHS. And then the last one, I did say I'd touch on postgrad. Obviously today is mostly about undergrad, the postgrad bit kicks in shortly, but we continue to see a sustained growth in page views and engagement on postgrad. So 15% in the postgrad application space, and then a 9% increase in international postgrad study. And again, those early indications from UCAS suggest that we're growing our international figures across the market, which is really positive. And we're really benefiting from the kind of closed borders of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the USA. Lots of engagement, lots of interest, and the further, I hate to say this, it's cynical, I say this all the time, but very cynically, the further we go into recession, the better postgrad will do. So the more you can do to push postgrad at the moment, the better, for sure. A little bit more detail on posting. So obviously page views the page views are the really big figures, and so any growth on page views is mammoth. And then posting again, so posting figures against page views, of course, are a lot smaller. So we see greater levels of percentage engagement, because, you know, if you have 200 posts and you have 100 or 200 posts more, it's not many, but you see immediately 100% growth. So we saw 15% increase in page views for physio and occupational therapy, but what that transpires into is actually a 298% increase in posting. So marginal increases in page views transpires into really high levels of engagement. We're seeing the same for English and linguistics there. Again, can you tell I'm happy about that? English has been in a really challenging state and decline kind of since Michael Grove turned things linear, and the love of study for English literature was kind of stripped out of it at GCSE level, but hopefully we're seeing that come back. Big increases in biological and life sciences, big increases in education and childhood studies, and then more of that healthcare coming back in. So big increases in pharmacy and big increases in nursing and midwifery. So there is a lot of healthcare in here still. I would anticipate that to continue. Who doesn't want to be a hero? But really lovely to see that those other areas around you know, communication, storytelling, and then across English and linguistics, bio and life sciences is an interesting one. I'm not sure what's driving that. And education and childhood studies, again, education's been in the press so much. This is really positive. Rob, I don't have the raw figures to hand, but certainly I can share those separately. Okay, so this is about the student room. I'm just going to show you briefly some figures for the UniGuide. So those of you that don't know, the UniGuide is a sister site for the student room. It used to be Which University, and we took it over earlier on this year and have relaunched it as a course comparison site that's completely neutral and student-centered. So again, a really interesting place to view the kind of the figures and the growth areas on this site, because it drills right down to course. In the student room, we're looking at subject areas more broadly, and on the UniGuide, we're looking at very specific courses. So I'm going to share top areas of growth based on percentage over the last 7 days, again, a year-on-year comparison, and then also, I haven't shared the raw numbers, but although, Rob, I can absolutely share those afterwards. And then we'll also look at unis specifically with the largest growth by percentage. So you can see on the screen, I'm not going to go through this specifically, but I think what's really interesting here is that it's a very broad range. There's no real trend here. We see chemistry in there a couple of times. There's criminology and forensic science in there a couple of times that are, I guess, kind of could be seen together. But then again, adult nursing, history, sport and recreation management. It's interesting, there's no real trends here. Which I think really, again, we'll come on to this shortly in terms of that qualitative piece. I think this is, students are really confused about their subject and they're worried about making the wrong decision. So there's going to be a big breadth of subjects that students are looking at. And then again, these are the largest growth year on year, so it's worth saying these are not the universities with the largest audience, the largest page views total, but these are the unis with the largest growth year on year based on the same time frame for last year. So St George's, Uni of Buckingham, Newman, Bolton, Huddersfield, Sunderland, St Mary's, UAL, Glasgow, Ulster. Once again, I think there's no real trends here. There's no regional trends. There's no tiering trends. There's some really you know, high tariff universities, there's some lower tariff universities, there are some specialists in here. There's no, I guess maybe just Buckingham and St George's because they're medicine primarily, kind of maybe the interesting piece there. But I think it's great to see that actually there's going to be students from all walks of life that are really engaged with university this year. Okay, so now we're going to go into the qualitative piece. So hopefully you can see what's written on the screen here. And hopefully we're not having any problems with the technology yet, which is a miracle. Fantastic. So what are students really interested in at the moment? Really, like, it's hygiene factors. They just want to understand how things work and what things mean. So one student here sent off their application in September. We're still in September, and they're worried it's too early. Will it take universities longer to send me an offer? They don't understand the process. They don't, you know, clearly the students don't know the specific deadlines. They don't know the process. And of course, they've not been through it before. That's completely understandable. But it just goes to show the level of awareness students have. They are so aware with so many things, but also the basics get them really twisted. Another student here, just not knowing the difference between a bachelor's in arts and a bachelor's in languages. I'm sure you all get the same conversation really regularly. What's the difference between a BA and a BSc? What's a bachelor's with honours? Is a bachelor's and undergrad? Understanding these terms, it takes some time. And I think it's really important to speak in really plain language. So this is what the students are talking about on the site. And again, we're asking them, you know, as students start asking questions, we want to then broaden it out into that quantitative piece. So understand the qualitative, understand it in a quantitative way as well. So we asked year 13s really recently, what information do you need help with the uni application process? And again, these are the real basics. You know, the largest on there is how to write a personal statement. And I think, of course, we're seeing that a lot on the student room, and hopefully we can help, and I'm sure you are as well. But just practical support in filling out a UCAS application form, support with choosing a university, timings, student finance and scholarship information. These are the real basics, and it's no surprise that students don't really know this, and that's okay. Interestingly, so Intro on Uni Open Days is one of the lowest in this mix, as are timings, and I think they just want to understand, like, zoom out a little bit, understand that bigger process, understand how to make a decision that's the right thing for them. I'm sure this is your guys' bread and butter. I'm sure you know this, and I know that you will do a lot of work to support students in this. But I think it's always good to have that, you know, salient reminder that students do not know the process, and I think we can all be. It's really easy to move into talking about UGs, PGTs, PGRs when we're talking to students, and it's just, they don't quite yet understand undergraduate, let alone the kind of the diminutive terms. So just keeping things really simple and straightforward is so powerful. And just to say on this, this had 316 responses, so it's a good level of engagement there and a good level of feedback from students. So, other markets, I think it's just worth saying that the US market is just a little bit ahead of us in lots of ways. So their universities went back a bit early and they saw huge outbreaks in COVID. Our universities just gone back and again seeing huge outbreaks in COVID. So I think it's just an interesting point to have a quick look at another market. So big thanks to Jeff Silingo and the Common App who have written about this recently. So this August, the first 2 days, they saw a 21% increase in signups for Common App. So Common App is, I guess, a UCAS comparative platform for the US. So those of you that don't know about Common App, there's about 900 different colleges around the US that are signed up for it. It's not everybody, but the goal really is to kind of do a little bit what UCAS does, which is to provide a centralized place for students to make an application and streamline the process. I can see that, Rob, you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask another question, or got a few different hands up? So, I see. Are your hands up still? Nope. Okay. Hands seem to have gone down, so if you've got questions at this moment, please feel welcome to just add them into the chat, and I'll try to answer them live because I can't see that the hands are up still. So sorry. And then, so just to kind of continue on this, then, and again, I can share a link to where this is found. Both applicants and applications are both up significantly as well in the first couple of days. So the data is slightly out of date now. I haven't seen an update since August, but this is August data. It opens on Common App opens for the new cohort from the 1st of August. So this is based on early August data. But again, seeing a huge increase. I imagine we'll see a similar thing this year, whether it transfers or not to students turning up next year. That's yet to be seen. Ben has asked, does the 24% increase include both domestic and international applicants, as in does it include UK applicants? That's a great question. The article I looked at didn't break down the difference in the markets for Common App. So I don't know. That's an interesting question. For the US market, I genuinely don't know about Common App. It's all for US colleges. Although I'm sure, maybe UK universities could also sign up. But just to be really clear, this is increases for the Common App, so applications and signups through this US system. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay. So just key takeaways from this short section then. Ultimately, students are more engaged and researching more earlier. We can see that in the big uplifts. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of indecision, lots of students just trying to work out the process. And they're on the student room. So, if you have an official rep, or if you don't, obviously use it. If you don't, then please do talk to me about setting that up. The other point then is just don't neglect the basics. It's okay to assume that they don't know anything to explain key terms as you go along. It's really important. It's much better to over-explain, for this early stage group than to under-explain it and leave them feeling really confused. I guess kind of a link to point one, provide opportunity for students to talk to you about specific courses. We can see there are lots of growth about specific course areas. Whatever you want to focus on and push, like the students are there, they're engaged, they're asking questions, and they're looking for answers, and they don't really know. They don't know the answers to many of these things. So specific courses, I think this time of year, at this point by now, students will have worked out really whether they want to go to university or not. The next step is working out their course, and then their university course often comes first. There are, of course, some students that are dead set on a single university and that's all they want, and they'll work out what they want afterwards. But most students are all about the course because it's a career or it's because it's their passion. So this time of year, and probably up until at least November time, course is really, really key. And then also, so use study help. We just touched on A-levels and BTEC. Using study help targeting with us as an example is a really, really great way to reach students in their early decision making, their planning. So those students that are now worried and concerned about their A-levels and their BTEC will be transitioning through into applications for university. Of course, there's a huge overlap, but it's really relevant. Their drive, their desire to do really well in their qualifications is driven in big part by wanting to feel proud of themselves, and because it's what their entire educational life has been leading up to, but a big part is because it gives them access to the next step, which is working with you guys and coming to your university. So if you can get in front of them and use that targeting as a first point, fantastic. And of course also, we know the feeder subjects, which is fantastic. If you have courses that need specific things, the students are on there talking about those bits. We know what A-levels they're doing. We know what GCSE said done. We can use that to help target the right students for you in a space that's really, really relevant. Okay, so we've kind of started to talk about decision making. I'm going to go into it in a bit more detail now. So I think it's worth, just recapping again on what we talked about earlier around that deferral piece. So when you're doing surveys, and I think, at the moment, it's really, really worth doing surveys, doing market insight, market research, investing in that at this time is really, really powerful, really important. But I think it's really worth saying that in a survey, your questions are leading, whether you like it or not. There's no way around that. It's a sacrifice, it's a compromise to make. And often people, they might give an answer, but they often don't know why they're giving that answer. And that's the really, really difficult part of marketing, understanding the why. Students can tell you afterwards loads of different reasons that, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and you can apply and almost, just kind of overlay decisions later on your original decision. But so much of it is incredibly emotional, so emotional, really emotional decision making. And like I said, with deferrals, students, the way that they were talking was nothing about deferrals, and yet surveys were saying, yeah, going to defer, what's the point? And that's so not what's happened at all. So hopefully, yeah, like just making sure, I guess really I'm saying that just to say again that it's really, really important to talk to prospects as much as possible, with really open questions. And I think also knowing that decision making, there's a hygiene factor, and then there's also a really emotional piece. And at the moment, those bits are getting really confused. So obviously we've got decision making. We're back here again. Student decision making is really, really difficult. There is so much information out there. There's so many options. And I think students feel more than ever that the decision this year defines the rest of their life. And when students feel that every year, that's part of the big reason they have such anxiety. But it's bigger this year. It's bigger because so much feels so big. We're in a microcosm, everything's locked down, everything feels bigger than ever before. So at this point, I'm just going to talk about my first book recommendation. I really love Danny Kahneman. I really love behavioral economics. I cannot recommend this book enough to understand the two ways that humans make decisions. And it's really, I think it's a great book. It's written really simply. I love the way that he writes. It's really fantastic. And there's just a couple of bits here that I've pulled out. Essentially, Thinking Fast and Slow, the premise of it is that there are two ways that humans think and make decisions. So there's system one, which is intuitive, and there's system two that is a slower, more deliberate decision making. Now, human brains are naturally lazy in lots of ways. This again is Kahneman's argument. So human brains are lazy. We try to revert to system one as much as possible, and often what we learn through system two in those slower, long, arduous, difficult thinking things then inform system one. So a couple of quotations here really. If a satisfactory answer to a hard question is not found quickly, system one will find a related question that is easier and will answer it. Danny calls it the operation of answering one question in place of another substitution. As soon as I read this, I could think about a million examples of when this happens. And again, I think this applies to market research, and it also applies to just understanding what students want to do next. Like the decision making is really, really hard. It's really challenging. It takes a long time. And it's really easy for students to almost reorient the questions you might be asking them to something that suits their understanding. Secondly, and I think really importantly, is that mood affects the operations of system one. When we're uncomfortable and unhappy, we lose touch with our intuition. And I think, so what I'm going to talk about shortly is just the vast indecision of students. So what he talks about, what he's saying here is your system one, the intuitive part of you, the bit that leads with emotion, that understands, knows, they know yourself, know what you want, know the next step, will feel like you do anyway. When you're feeling not good in yourself, low confidence, when your mood is low, all that intuition goes out of the window. So where students may have had intuition in the past and be able to, because maybe life was more stable, there wasn't a global pandemic maybe, this is maybe the point at which students felt more comfortable and more able to make those big decisions based on intuition. And though, and that's not easy now, unfortunately. So I think that's where so just as I was doing this, as I look at students, what they're talking about, it really reminds me of this book, and I think gives a really great grounding and understanding of decision making, which is really powerful. So let's have a look at that indecision. Okay, so this student is talking about, they know they've got 5 options, they're planning to become a biomedical scientist, and they've worked it out, but they're getting really, really far into the details of all of these bits because they don't trust their intuition. They don't like learning about animals, so biological wouldn't be interesting for them. They want to go to Bristol because it's their dream university. So you can see here, there's a real battle of hearts and minds here in a really, really big way, which is really challenging. I've also just noticed on my next slide that my animations can't quite work, so we might have to, so sorry about that. This is a long post from a student who is confused. They, it's like I said, it's a battle between hearts and minds. It's expensive. They desperately want to go to Bristol, but the course is not what they want. How do they reconcile that? Really challenging. Oh no, it has worked. Awesome. So Here, somebody wants to apply for both law with American studies and law with politics, and how do they write about that in a personal statement. So they've kind of decided on one part of it, but law alone is not enough. They want more. They want more. It's not, you know, the one simple thing is not enough. And then this one made me laugh so much. TikTok sensation, bless you. I can't decide on a specific subject to apply for, so I've been thinking about applying for 5 different subjects at 5 different universities, specifically biomedical science, mental health nursing, psychology, teaching, and therapeutic radiography. I can imagine the number of conversations you have all had with students that are very similar to this. What's lovely is looking through all the comments back to this user. Everyone's saying, whoa, slow down, don't apply yet, work out what you want to do first. Working out your subject is so important, first and foremost. And I think what's really clear about these subjects is this student really wants to help people. So, you know, that's the intuitive part is helping people, but then that other, you know, the kind of the that system too, the slower thinking piece, the bit that wants to work out the right option, it's really difficult. They're not trusting either part of them. So like, I'll just do all of it. I'll apply for everything. I'll cover all bases, which is not super helpful for them or for you. So yeah, oh, bless them. And these are just some examples. There are so many more. I literally have like, I don't know, like 25 just links for me to flip through to have a look at these different bits, and you can just go on the student homepage and you'll see them like that. So much indecision. Again, we're seeing the battle between hearts and minds. So this person is applying for philosophy of politics, but they love the arts and theatre. I mean, I guess I probably would think that maybe like philosophy is also a passion-led course. They're an academic, studying is a hobby for them. Love, I wish I would have been like that. And they're not sure whether they should study the academic route or the creative route. And again, it's a battle between hearts and minds. I mean, these questions come up every year, but we're seeing so much more of them at the moment. And then finally, styles of study as well. So the student isn't even, like, they're not even at the point of working out the right uni or the right course. They are just terrified of exams. And they desperately only want coursework. And Zosia _ this user, really, really optimistic. They're looking for help, and that's lovely. But again, like, their decision making is based on a fear, which is a little bit sad. But again, wow, the student is looking at a lot of courses: liberal arts, history of arts, classics and history, psychology, criminology, or possibly a joint course, something else. Interior design or decoration, completely left field there. Anthropology, philosophy, but again, as a joint course. Ooh, where do you start? Again, this person, they're clearly creative. They love learning about ways of looking at things, ways of understanding things. It's really fantastic, but how do you whittle that down? Particularly when all a student is, you know, the big motivation for the student is just avoiding exams, which is a shame. Again, I really hope that kind of these questions, you can see that these students are looking early on. And I think, again, we have, there's a bit of a stereotype across the market where I think we do see the very early birds, the very early engagers. There's been your AAA star, Oxbridge candidates. But we can see from that previous post, is, you know, and again, that's not to provide a dichotomy, but a BTEC student who is planning their future, and again, they're looking at it really, really early and engaged really early. So there's so much opportunity now to influence these young people and support them in their decision making and make it really make it straightforward. And the other big thing is employability, which I'm sure is no surprise here. So again, we've asked students about how they're feeling about job prospects post-pandemic. So I guess the difficult thing here is we've got no idea when the pandemic is going to end. So post-pandemic could be next year, it could be 5 years' time. We've got absolutely no idea. And I think there's, I guess, a couple of positives. So a quarter of the responses, they're feeling really, really positive. There's 343 responses on this post at the point at which I was looking at these figures. But then 36% are worried, which is sad and unsurprising. And finally, I'm very much focusing on the here and now at the moment. So I think when we look at some of the different course areas and subject areas, we can see, I think, perhaps more than over the last few years, students feeling open and willing to pursue a passion subject. So again, over the summer, I've seen big increases in performance arts, creative arts, some specialist providers, and some specialist courses, things like agriculture and equine studies and things like that. So seeing some big increases in those passion subjects, but also increases like we've seen in healthcare. I've seen specific posts of students talking about sorry, I've just been distracted. I'm so sorry. Big increases of students talking about healthcare and the idea that working in the NHS, being a nurse, being a doctor, is a job for life, which it really is. I think this year everything is really, really challenged, and of course the NHS is challenged, but in a unique way in which they need more people, more resources, versus the other side of things. So I think we're seeing that balancing out between pursuing your passion because it's a global pandemic, screw it, do what you want, alongside, wow, I need a job for life, I need something that's secure and safe and where I can help people and make a difference. Okay, so key takeaways at this juncture then. So students really do feel more overwhelmed with choice for courses than previous years, and making the right decision feels more important than ever. Earlier engagement, more conversation, which is, yeah, super like sad and understandable. Optimism is quite low for the future of careers and employability. So the more that you can express the value of your subject areas, your university, and what you do for students in terms of employability is really, really powerful. And I really would, I guess the last one really is just read that book if you haven't read it before. It's honestly such a good book. I love it. There's also a really good book by Michael Lewis, which is about like this kind of all of the theory that's come out from Danny Kahneman. But yeah, consider those two types of decision making, systems 1 and system 2. So system 1 is really about intuition, and there's also the considered approach, and how can you appeal to both those things? Just making sure that you've got content, engagement, and are addressing both of those different points, and just making sure you're appealing to both of those types of decision making. Okay, so we've gone through a bit of the of data about students, what they're doing on the student room. We've talked a little bit about decision making, and just at this juncture, I'm just going to address a question from Matt. So something I've just said about Oxbridge, etc., has prompted me to wonder if the increase in medical course, etc., is related to the October 15th application deadline. Would you say that this could be responsible for the currently seen increases as well, or is this seen over longer term as well, please? So obviously the data I've looked at is just the last 7 days, but the increases across posting and engagement actually have pretty much been since lockdown. Like the huge amount of change in decision has spurred big increases. I guess we kind of anticipated it for the cohort for 2020, and weren't really sure what the 2021 cohort would be doing. So we have seen a sustained increase. I certainly think that the 15th of October deadline could contribute to it, but it wouldn't suggest the amount of increases we're seeing across the board, across lots of different subject areas. I don't think that's kind of that's not the only, that can't be the only thing. Oxbridge and medicine are not the only thing. There is a bigger sustained increase, and I'll have my contact details in at the end, and I can add them into the chat now actually. So if you guys have more specific bits that you'd like me to go into, like let's share them with me and let's have a chat. With the webinars, I really try to keep things a bit higher level, because there's a lot of you who've all got different subject areas, and I want to make sure we're providing as much value as possible. But for those of you that don't have my email address, it's now in the chat, so please feel welcome to contact me if you have any queries or needs with specific subject areas. Okay, now we've got 15 minutes to go, and just about half of the deck to go, but it's fine, we've got time, we'll go through it. Okay, so recruitment events. Okay, so For recruitment events, I think, we'll go through this shortly, but essentially the way that we think about events now does need to change again. I'll talk about this shortly, but we entered lockdown and you all had to, and it was incredible. It was amazing how much you did in the time that you had. And I imagine it was because you were all working 18 hours a day for weeks and months on end. So, God, like amazing work. But what everyone did, from what I could see, primarily was take what was the open day physical experience and transport that online. And I'll talk about we've got some feedback from a couple of different sources, so I'll talk about that shortly. But I think the next step is to rethink what an online event is, and acknowledging that it is different than a physical event and can provide something very, very different. We've done replication, and now the next phase is evolution and optimizing towards the channels that you've got. But first off, let's just talk about what makes a great virtual event. Some real basics. Microphones work and all speakers can be heard. You'd be surprised by, maybe you're not probably surprised about how much technology can let us down, and hopefully you guys have been able to hear me okay today. I know that I speak a million miles an hour, so hopefully you can hear me. That speakers and hosts are comfortable with the technology, so that they've used it before. Again, this is a challenge. I know, like so many academics, hopefully that they've used the systems now and know what they're doing, which is fantastic. But gosh, hundreds of academics, hundreds of colleagues to make sure everyone understands how to use the platform that you've chosen. Again, some of the feedback that I've seen on the student room and elsewhere really has been essentially a challenge with trying to work out how to get the presentation to show. And it's, you know, these are basics, but I just want to remind you guys of them. That speakers and hosts turn up on time. Again, some of the feedback has been things being late. And then finally, that the content is relevant and interesting. These are basics, these are no-brainers, but it's worth having a checklist like that just to make sure that everyone knows what they're doing, they feel comfortable, they know what the next steps are. And also, you know prospective students better than anybody else. It's your job, it's your bread and butter. So I think it's, have the confidence to have those conversations with the speakers and just make sure that you feel the flow works, that you feel that it's really giving the value to students that you would hope for. In terms of the other basics, so I think these are, again, essentials, but maybe more challenging. So first off, creating an environment where the audience feels comfortable interacting. I'd love you all to ask more questions. I love it. It's great. And thank you everyone that has been asking questions as we've gone along, helping me kind of clarify things. But creating an environment to interact is much easier said than done. And the next piece is wayfinding and platform explainers to ensure that the whole audience knows how to use it. I used to work at university and remember open days and doing all of the different signage around the campus to make sure people get to the right places, all the maps, everything on campus. And that is necessary because no one's been there before. But some people may have not used your platform before. They may not know what they can and can't do. And it's even just things like, starting by saying, you're welcome to ask questions or not, or here's how you want, if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, here's how you do it. There's loads of other amazing tools that lots of different systems have. So just making sure that that's really clear for the audience as well. I guess this is a really simple webinar. It's very, very kind of one way, unfortunately, but I guess also we talked about, early on, the Q&A box is for bigger questions that we can answer at the end, and the chat box is for more technical questions. I've tried to use both the whole way through, but just having kind of setting it out to start is really important. Okay, so we've also had some really great feedback from the Student Hut. Student Hut is a subsidiary of Natives, if you guys don't know it, and they've done some really interesting pieces with their panel. So I just wanted to touch on this, and again, thank you so much to the Student Hut for this. What do students want from a virtual open day? It's pretty much the same as a physical open day. So they wanted tours of student accommodation, live chats with tutors and academics, live chats about the courses, and tours of the campus. Is that possible? Kind of. It's all virtual. It's exactly what they want from open days as well. But you can do those in slightly different ways. Things that make a virtual open day bag, and I think this is the irony. So people want to have the tours, they want to be able to see the campus, but that's also what makes it bad. what they're like, what they want from a virtual open day is an open day, which you can't have, and so that needs to just be completely overhauled. For some people, they couldn't ask questions at virtual open days. I'm assuming it must have been recorded ones. I can't imagine that anyone would want to put on an open day where they can't ask questions. And then finally, lack of face-to-face contact. So again, I know, I think everyone has slightly different expectations for a virtual open day for webinars, and some academics and some people may not have a camera, might not want to use it, but loads and, you know, any data from Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Skype will always tell you that when there is a person speaking on camera that you can see, the engagement is much, much higher. We're humans, we like to see humans, that's completely normal. So yeah, thanks to the Student Hub for those bits. I think probably not massive surprises, but really, again, just important to look at what students are asking. And I think, again, this comes back to where surveys or specific questions provide specific answers, and terminology is really, really important. If we were to change the question to, you know, what would you want from an online experience from a university? What would you want from a university conference? What would you want, you know, what would you want from a taste day from university? All of those things will change. There's a fantastic new university called London Interdisciplinary School. They do discovery days, and it's really, really interactive. And I think that's a great example of ways to make things interactive and to reimagine what that discovery, that open day is. It really is a point of discovery. So just some more general considerations from me about virtual events that are based on some of the conversations I've had. So this is really anecdotal. So first off, some virtual events had really high engagement, lots of people coming onto them. It was really clear that they were locked down. There was going to be no opportunity to come to the university. But the feedback I've had from you guys so far, and perhaps you guys can tell me a bit more in the chat, the Q&A, you can write an answer or a question anonymously if you prefer to, if you'd like not to share the specifics. But I've heard so far that September events really have not performed at the expected level. In talking to our community team about that, what we anticipate the reason for that being is that students may be holding out for applicant days and visit days post-application. And also that many students are, like, you know, the UCAS fairs have come back online, and so potentially prioritising that broader experience rather than coming to yours, which is a real shame, I think, and really we should be prioritising, students should be prioritising the experience with you. The second bit really is around weekend events. They're still favoured. Now that students are back to school and college, they don't have the kind of flexibility that they had before. So weekend events are still really, really favoured. You'll find, and I'm sure you're already finding, your Saturday events are really important. Really interesting point from Ashley, thank you so much. So the upcoming UCAS fair apparently only has 1,600 attendees. Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you so much, Ashley. So maybe the UCAS fairs aren't making the difference. That's really interesting. Perhaps they are just waiting for that next step. I also realised I've just gone back a slide, so sorry. Thank you, Ashley, for that. So interesting then. So I think potentially then it is students really hoping they can get onto campus and just see it firsthand. The final point here, again, I think it's worth saying that these general considerations are anecdotal. This is based on the conversations I've had with universities and with colleagues internally that also work with students more directly. Something else that's favoured seems to be the events that are one-stop shop rather than kind of week-long or multi-day options. I really, really understand the need in some ways to provide a differentiation between different subject areas. And I know of many universities that have been doing maybe a week-long where you have a different faculty per day. But I do think, like we've just seen, so many students are considering so many different options. And while many may be across lots of different, you know, I guess that one person was looking at, God, definitely different faculties. There's no way that some of those subjects are in the same faculty across many universities. So yeah, it's certainly, the one-stop shop I think is really, really powerful and enables also parents to come along. So certainly prioritising single one-stop shop days, ideally weekend events, and I guess that's kind of what we've learned over many, many years anyway, kind of providing and prioritising when students are available and breaking the barriers down for that, for sure. David, thank you also for this. I'm just going to read out a couple of more bits. So thank you so much for a couple of these bits of feedback. So David, I won't say where you're from if you prefer probably not to. So David did a virtual fair that had low engagement across the board. That was last week. We moved all webinars to a 5 p.m. kickoff to give students flexibility to attend. Hopefully our upcoming virtual open days go well. I really hope so, David. Jonathan has said, so the experience for registration to attendance rate drop in line with platform operators' expectation, but 20% lower than June. So keen to understand how ensure attendance registration is fine. Okay, really interesting. And then Jonathan again has shared some more bits. Oh, just for me. Okay. I'm going to share. I've started reading it now. I'm so sorry, Jonathan. I didn't read that last bit. So Jonathan hasn't seen specific numbers with the different approaches being used to engage regions by UK university for UCAS, etc. So there's some comments that have been better. Cool. Thanks, Jonathan. Thank God. Okay, so thank you everyone for staying with me. So we don't have much to go, and I will try to whiz through it. Those who need to shoot off, I really understand, and thank you so much for staying the entire hour. There's still 141 people, so thank you so much. Okay, so we have, of course, our students what they want. So again, a lot of things obviously we're asking about students on TSR. Of course, they're going to be favouring TSR because they're on TSR, but I think it's worth just broadening the kind of view of this out. So live videos and Q&As on TSR. Yep, absolutely. I'm going to talk about multi-channel shortly about different ways to do that. Videos recorded and posted on TSR. So those of you may know that we've been doing TSR answers. We've done them recently with the Universities Minister. We did one before the summer holidays with Bombay Bicycle Club. We've done quite a few. They've been super successful, which has been great. Experts chatting with you on the student room. So, I mean, I love to see this. I love that it's the highest response here. But many of you have a university partner pack, which brings with it an official rep, or 3 official reps if you have the university partner pack. And it's you guys. You are the experts. You, your students, your academics, the admission staff, the inquiry staff. It brings me so much joy to see that this is the biggest thing that students find most valuable, that you're seen as experts and that you're talking to them in threads. Students really value it. I think what's really interesting is there's many, I've had many conversations in the past where maybe you feel that maybe you're entering a student's territory and you don't want to intrude, but part of the reason students are here, they are not just looking for information, they're really looking for wisdom and your experience, and that's what expertise is. Expertise is not about the knowing, it's about the understanding, and that's what you bring. Of course, articles published on TSR, live video Q&As on social media, of course, we'll talk about that shortly, and Q&As. So across all of these things, if you would like to talk to me more about ways to get your other experts, maybe your